My name is Miklosh Kokish. I am a fanatic lover of bull type of dogs, and I am the author of Bulldog Encyclopedia, which was republished several times. In these books, I have been dealing with the origin and the development of the bull type of dogs, and, as all of these dog types originated from the so-called ancient, working bulldogs of England, the origin of these dogs and the history that what happened them and why they disappeared by the 20th century. Let's begin with the phenomenon that the appearance of bulldog type of dogs, I call them types, as we cannot talk about breeds until the early 20th century, is a long story and can be traced back to long centuries, or even, for a millennium. What we know today that it was in the early medieval times, when the descendants of some ancient Molosser war dogs were started to be used in given professions as working dogs. Almost all of these professions can be connected to cattle husbandry, cattle herding and butchering works. The earliest versions of these dogs appeared in the early medieval England, where there were long traditions of keeping large-bodied, Molosser-type war dogs, for example by the Brit and Celtic tribesmen. According to historic sources, these war dogs existed in two sizes parallelly, the larger ones with the weight around 180 to 200 pounds, who were used as, in quotes, heavy tanks on the battlefields. And there were the lighter ones, who were around 100 pounds, and were used mainly for hunting and guarding purposes. You should imagine these dogs like a kind of very agile and active mastiff type of dogs. Exactly these lighter versions of ancient war dogs were the ones who were the far ancestors of the then existing medieval working bulldog types who became so widespread in England. These dogs lost their importance as being used for war dog purposes and slowly penetrated to the common human communities of that time. Partly because of inbreeding, the distinctive white color has become widespread, the distinct-looking head with underbites were forming and the size of these dogs decreased significantly. These dogs were easier to feed, were able to work effectively, and as they were smaller in size, they were not banned by the feudal laws and decrees of that time which prohibited the keeping of large-bodied dogs for the average populace. These dogs appeared in the medieval England around the Anglo-Saxon era and have become present for almost a millennium. These dogs varied in size and in format, they could be around 50, but around 100 pounds either. It was not important for the people of that age, the only thing that mattered that they should be able to work effectively and be healthy, nothing else. Those who were able to work and fight well were kept, fed and maintained, and those who were not, died in a short way. At that time the goal of dog breeding was not to reach a nice outlook within a standard, or to create a special color or fur type, but only the ability to work effectively together with their owners. This is the main reason why working ancient bulldogs have become so effective and good dogs was this very tough and severe selection process and the positive consequences of this for the bloodlines. And when I say this, please, do not think of the today's English or French bulldogs, that is a different and very sad story. Complete attachment to humans and a rigid determination and ruthlessness in work, these were characteristics of the medieval, ancient English bulldogs. The irony of their existence is that exactly these qualities, what we respect so much in these dogs, which led to their disappearance by the late 19th century, as these bulldog types are no longer present in our days, only their descendants, who we will talk about soon. Of course, there are many experiences to recreate this type of dogs in our age, just to mention some: Old English Bulldog, Victorian Bulldog, Old Type Bulldog and many others, but these dogs will never be the same what existed some 100 years ago and about whom we are talking about. Here, we have to talk a little about the role of medieval bulldogs in animal fights. I do not want to talk too much about that chapter of their history, but we cannot avoid it as it is connected deeply to the existence of the ancient bulldogs. Besides working as helper of herdsmen and butchers, the other main field of their work connected the medieval bulldogs to the arenas, where animal fights were organized near the town marketplaces. The average in general poor people at that time easily found out that, in quotes, very exciting performances can be built around the work of these dogs, what entertains other people. The initial form of this was the so-called bull baiting, when a bull was chained to a stake by the neck or leg and dogs were set on the bull to fight with it. It is frequently documented that how popular it was, for example on Sundays, when the crowd visited a church and then took part in a bull baiting. We can say that from the 12th to the 19th century, when they were banned as inhumane, these spectacles were usually the main source of entertainment for the crowd, and of course the bulldogs of that age took actively part in it. These events were staged at theater-like arenas known as bull or bear gardens. Besides this, by the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution reached England, and as cattle was more and more transported by train and not on foot, part of the bulldog's work, namely the herding of cattle, was lost. What remained were working with butchers and fighting in the arenas. As a consequence of industrialization, cities have become overpopulated and a lot of people moved in from the countryside. These crowds began to tase and formulate their own dogs, partly for work and partly to take part in the fights in the animal fighting arenas. As bull baiting became prohibited in England in the early 19th century, sadly, dog-to-dog fights became the primary source of the population of big cities. The medieval, or ancient bulldogs more and more had to face the newly formed bull and terriers at the arenas and pits, who were faster and more effective in these fights. What is more, they became very popular in a short time, as they were much smaller as size, and this is why it was much cheaper to keep, raise and train them. As a consequence of all of these changes and factors, the ancient English bulldogs lost their work and task and have slowly become extinct. A very interesting addition to the history of ancient, or medieval bulldogs is what happened to a white bulldog, named Tom, who was a popular and successful fighting dog. In our days and time, it is very difficult to understand how popular dogfights were at that time. The most well-known dogs of this activity were the animal celebrities at that time, not only in England, but in continental Europe as well, like in the Netherlands and in Germany. Why Tom, the white bulldog, is interesting from this respect. In the late 1800s, he won several dog fights in some German big cities, and as it is documented, he was the father of many litters and dogs, who later had an important role in the formation of the German boxers. We can say for quite sure that the boxers are not only the descendants of the German Bullenbeiser and the Dutch Bullenbiesers, but at least in half the descendants of medieval English bulldogs and Tom himself. If you look at photos of the local boxer clubs in Germany in the first decades of the 20th century, you see that at least half of the boxers present were white snow-colored at that time. It was all the heritage came from the ancient bulldogs, as none the Bullenbeisers nor the Bullenbiesers had a white-colored version.